It seems like we are on air. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from LIBER. We are looking at the screen where I am. I'm Sophie Wenström. I'm the chair of the LIBER Open Access Working Group. And I have with me on either side Ralf Schimmer and Agnes Posanti, and they will be our speakers today. So this is me. I work at Stockholm University Library, and I will be only managing this group and not talking too much, I hope. This is our speakers, Dr. Ralf Schimmer from Max Planck Digital Library. He lives in Munich, in Germany. And Agnes is the leader of the Information and Resources for Research Unit at the Spanish National Research Council. So very well experienced speakers here today. I will come back to a presentation of them shortly. So a couple of things. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will receive a link to the recording later. The slides will be put up on Zenodo for everyone to see. And if you have any questions to me or to the speakers, put them in the chat box and we'll add the questions later on. So at the end of the talk. And we have in the background the wonderful Tanya, who will be managing the chat and everything technical around us. So without further ado, I think I will start presenting the speakers. So I'll go back one. So first to speak is Agnes. The title of her talk is Anatomy of the Transformative Agreement, the CSIC's race. And Agnes has been leading the Information Resources for Research Unit of the Spanish National Research Council since 1994. And she's also served as a director of the Division of Digital Processes and Services at the Spanish National Library. She has extensive experience in publishing negotiations and licensing of digital content and has served on many international publisher advisory boards, including Elsevier, Springer, Wiley, IOP, and Brill. She's also a member of the LIBER's own executive board, and she holds many strategic roles in the open access movement, representing Spain's library consortia, for example, on the SCOAP3 Global Council, and also is acting as the national contact point for Spain in the Open Access 2020 initiative, which Ralf is also involved in. And she's also on the executive board of Spark Europe. So here's a well-renowned open access advocate, and I therefore hand over the mouse and the presentation screen to you, Agnes, if that's okay.
So thank you, Sophie, and hello, everybody. I hope everyone is safe at home. And today I will be presenting the Spanish National Research Council experience on doing some transformation agreements. First of all, I would like to thank the Open Access Group for the invitation to speak on that occasion. And my talk today will follow this agenda. I will focus on, first of all, I will want to give you some information about and some context about what CSIC is and which is its documentary policy. I will pass to speak about the internal challenges that we face when doing those negotiations and what we did in order to overcome some of these challenges. I will pass through the question of the principles that we follow in order to manage the agreements, why do we think those agreements are really transformative agreements? I will speak a bit about our next steps, the CSIC strategy to go forward, and some conclusions about what we learned from this experience. Okay, let's start with a few words about the CSIC. The CSIC is the Spanish National Research Council. It's a national-wide research institution depending on the Ministry of Science and Innovation. It's a multidisciplinary institution. It holds 122 research institutes spread over the country. And within those institutes, we have total number of scientific staff, which is around 3,600 people. Within the institution, we have scientific research network of libraries. Right now, 59 still physical libraries and a big digital library that is built up from print collections and important digital collections. You can see on the screen, it's about 1.8 million print documents, 5,000 subscribed e-journals, and more than a half e-book collections. And also we have a specific number of canonical databases. We have an intense use of those contents, more than 3 million of downloads every year. And we spent a budget on electronic and print resources, which is around 8 million euros, but VAT included. Regarding the publication output, the CSIC has last year published more than 12,000 publications, but if we look at the corresponding authors' publications, the share of that total is around 22%. Since 2006, the CSIC started an open access strategy, which has two different or follows two different routes. From 2008, we started a green policy. We established our institutional repository, but it was not till last year that the CSIC decided to formalize an open access institutional mandate for publications and data sets. We have also some compromise on the gold route, and it has been based on funds for open access publishing program that the CSIC established in 2008. In that program, we had 13 agreements with full open access publishers. We spent around 175,000 euros per year, and till 2008 we had published more than 4,000 articles. We had some also some flipping experiences, mainly based on the SCOAP 3 initiative, and lately the initiative on anthropology librarian. And since 2019, we have started the route of the transformative agreements. Right now we have agreements with Royal Society of Chemistry, Cambridge, and Oxford University Press. Sorry, I lost my presentation. Sorry. In that picture, you can see that the level of open access compliance following any means of the different open access routes, the CSIC has reached almost 55% of completely open access through the different green, bronze, hybrid, and gold. So just to give an idea where we are in terms of accessibility. Focusing on the internal challenges and the taken actions that we make in order to overcome some of those challenges, which are challenges that mainly are it's a mix of challenges, and I would like to outline the following ones when we started those journey to the transformative. So first of all, we have to face that we didn't have a clear understanding about what a transformative agreement was, how to make it real, how to convince our institutional in order to support us to move from the status quo situation to that new scenario. So that was not easy because it took some time in order to convince the institution that we have to start that new initiative. So, I mean, maybe that was more than the institutional resistance to make things different. The second one was to overcome the lack of institutional data control. So we were used to have to manage a lot of information coming from the reading side of our business, but we were not used to manage information that comes from the publishing side. So we have to start to set up an internal system in-house in order to have a clear picture of what was our real output publication. From that information, the corresponding authors' numbers, what was the financial spend that we had been made in paying APCs. So the control of that kind of data was another important challenge. The third one was that we wanted to make this change without spending more money on the agreement. So the neutrality issue was also an important one, and we managed, but it means that we have to ask for some increases on the library budget coming from the other parts of the institution. Transformative agreements means new ways of working, new workflows to introduce into the library system, and it means you have to be prepared for that. So because you have to make some support to authors, you have to control the submission process, you have to identify who is who and who is allowed to be covered in that publishing transformation. And that means that you have to organize at least part of your team in order to be behind that new workflows. Of course, the communication and awareness raisings among the scientists community is another important issue that we should overcome. And finally, another internal challenge that we still face is that how to prepare ourselves for the renewals that we will have to face in the coming years when those transformative agreements end. About the principles that we follow in order to make these negotiations. As you know, there are plenty of initiatives, international and national outside, which I think they are very helpful because they give you a lot of information and guidelines in order to start those negotiation processes. And I just mentioned, I think that the most important ones, the Open Access 2020 initiative that show us the goals and the objectives that we have to face. Also, the LIBER principles are very useful, and of course, we have also some national statements coming from the Conference of Rectors in Spain, and even if we are not member of the Coalition S, I think Plan S also has good things to take from. So nothing new on that part. Our willingness was to open up the immediate access to the CSIC corresponding authors' publications. We wanted to cover hybrid and full open access in the agreements. We wanted to retain the archival rights. We were firm in not transfer the copyright. We wanted to ask for open access licenses like CC BY or similar. We wanted to make the agreements in a multi-year scenario. We wanted to control the percentage yearly increases. We wanted the agreements to be clearly transparent. We wanted to introduce some compensation mechanisms in order to establish the total amount of publications we wanted to cover. And of course, we ask for a dashboard or a workflow that let us the power of validate everything in that publishing process. From the beginning, we stand very firm in the mantras of we were upset. We wanted not to maintain anymore the status quo system. We do not want to spend more money, so we think and we agree that there is enough money to make this transition. And we also stand very firm that if we didn't reach an agreement, we were firm on going to a cancellation. Why we do think that those three agreements that we did are really transformative agreements? Yes, because with them we made a flip. We changed the model. We move money from the reading to the publishing and reading system. We get the immediate open access, which is the main goal behind those initiatives. We make we plan to make in a concrete period of time. and within this time, the fees of publishing and reading will be completely rebalanced. We reach the cost neutrality, and when I speak about cost neutrality, I mean institutional cost neutrality, not library cost neutrality, but institutional. And we reach that goal, which is very important. We stop the uncontrolled APC payments, which is something that has been happening in our institutions for many, many years. So with, at least in this agreement, we stop this situation. We keep the author rights and we make the agreements transparent, because those agreements can be seen at the ESAC registry. So that was our publishing landscape when we lived in the subscription old model. This is the picture from 2018. This is the situation right now. So you can see that we reach something more than 50% of our corresponding authors publication is open by means of a transformative agreement or by means of a full open access publisher agreement. But we have to move on, and we have a strategy within our institution. We have an open science strategy which force us to move before 2024 and to obtain at least, to transform at least the 80% of our publishers' portfolio. This is our institutional open access goal. It's quite ambitious, and we want to make it following two different levels of negotiations. We want to make some national negotiations. I mean, the CSIC will join others to make those negotiations. It's been recently the Spanish Conference Rectors and the CSIC agreed to make or to establish a political commission in order to start negotiations with a small selection of big publishers, commercial and scientific ones. And at the institutional level, we started negotiations with Taylor and Francis in order to reach an agreement for the next year. And we also want to start with a small but very important scientific society, which is the Microbiology Society. So we expect to reach or to land in that new yellow situation from 2021 to 2022. That is our strategy. So this is my last slide, and so it's about what we learn in that process, and if we can give some advice to the institutions that want to start a journey like this. So the first thing, it's very important in order to be prepared for the transformative agreements to have systems in place in order to gather institution analysis, to gather institutional information and be prepared to analysis those data in order to make the reconciliation process with publishers. The process of data reconciliation takes a lot of time. There is many cross checks with authors, affiliations, information, payments, which is very hard and takes a lot of time. Include in the agreements, if possible, hybrid and open access titles. I think it's paramount in order to control the publishing expenditures. Forecast the publication outputs is very difficult. APCs or PAR fees are not yet completely or cost transparent and still very high. Transformative agreements are better than subscription, but the future is still uncertain. Another important issue that we learn is that the legal documents that publishers pass to us in order to make the agreements are not completely legally adjusted to the new reality. Regarding the metadata provision for institutional repository, I would say there is a lot of work to do there because this is not working properly. And of course, at least in Spain, we need more institutionals to be involved in such a journal because this is important to move things forward. And finally, look for strong political commitment because dismantle this market is very urgent, but it's still very difficult. And we do not know how long that will last. So we need more institutionals to be involved in order to move things forward. And yes, it's a big slope ahead, but I think things are going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnes. I see already that we have a couple of questions. Well, we will wait until after both presentations before we ask them. I hope that's fine with you. Next speaker and next presentation is Dr. Ralph Schimmer. His presentation is Project Deal, the Anatomy of the Transformative Agreement. And now we will be moving from institutional agreement to a national agreement with a deal project that many of you probably already heard of. And if you don't know Ralph already, he's the Deputy Librarian and Head of Information at the Max Planck Digital Library in Munich. He leads the licensing strategy of the Max Planck Digital Library, serving about 80 plus advanced research institutes. Max Planck Society is big in Germany. He's a champion of open access in scholarly communications. He chaired the governing council of SCOAP 3 between 2014 and 2016. He serves on many international boards and is the leader of the Open Access 2020 initiative. And with his team, he's currently operating the journal deal agreements with Wiley and Springer Nature. So I hope that we will learn more about this, Ralph, in the next few minutes. So please take over.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for the kind introduction. Yes, as it was mentioned, the focus of this presentation is really to focus on the notion and concept of transformative agreement, and the practical example in mind are the two nationwide agreements in Germany, the deal agreements with Wiley and Springer Nature, that inform the practical side of this presentation. On our institutional side and for the Max Planck Society, we have an additional number of transformative agreements that we have been operating since 2016, and we try to enlarge that range as quickly and with maximum consequence as we can. my starting slide is really to focus a little bit on transformative agreements. And when I pick up on Agnes' conclusions, she said that transformative agreements are better than the status quo. This already is a very important insight and assessment. Unfortunately, this insight has not arrived yet everywhere and with everybody. But transformative agreements are really a concept that have been developed and refined over the last 5 to 6 years. You may all remember that, like back in 5 years ago, the term offsetting or offset agreement was very prevalent, and then came publish and read or read and publish, and denoting a variety of flavors, but they all can be subsumed and combined under the concept of transformative agreements. And that's been like my favorite phrase, how I would want to conceptualize and phrase them. So transformative agreements are highly strategic, but at the same time also highly practical. So they are not pie in the sky, they have real consequence. What they have done is that they have taken our interaction and relations with publishers to a new level. People in this audience who are involved in license agreements, in negotiating, are probably very much aware of what that means. And associations such as ICOLC is very interested, and transformative agreement have been a concept that's been discussed in these forums very frequently and with growing interest over the past years. So transformative agreements come with the mission and the purpose. They are meant to explicitly move away from the paywall system and to effect a shift in finances and operations, so that the consequence would be to have more openness in our system of scholarly communication. The agreements themselves carry the promise in their multitude. So it's not that any single agreement alone can accomplish the larger goal. So they really are larger than themselves. They come as a concept, and what we need is further proliferation, further uptake, and growing number. We see that there is quite a growing interest, but this is still not enough, and we hope that the concept can be further propagated. So as I said, the mission is to carry subscription over to open access with the goal of making openness the default in the publishing system. What they do is they combine the two realms of the journal publishing, the subscription side and the publishing side, under the oversight and control of one central agreement. And so they help to immediately increase the share of open access articles in an otherwise hybrid or subscription-based paywall system. They enable to change and further enhance the workflows and to shift the budgets also. And so therefore they are can be seen, and I think this is also an important note, that they are just another evolutionary stage in the development of licensing into how our relationships with publishers on the contractual side are being organized, and how this has all developed over the years. So that's more the element on the conceptual side. Now I want to turn to the concrete practical side with the deal strategy in Germany. So what deal stands for, or this concept, is that it was really a unified country level all-in approach. All-in means all institutions integrated and eligible under this agreement, to so that we can address the publishers at eye level. The negotiations have been led by the German Rectors Conference but on behalf of all fellow members of the Alliance of German Science Organizations. This is an informal network where all the German science organizations have been collaborating for the past more or less 50 years. So this collaboration is absolutely not new, but just the purpose to engage in negotiations with publishers, that is the new element. So there was a negotiating team set up combining the political will of research administrators. So at that time, the president of the German Rectors Conference was leading the negotiation team himself. And it involved also the operational experience of library and consortia leaders. So the most experienced library and consortia people that we could have in the country were represented there. There's also close collaboration with our main funding body, which this organization itself is part of the Alliance of Science Organizations. And the idea was that it would really be an all-in license covering all research and university organizations in the country. So as a context, why we felt this was needed. So there were several key assessments. One, that all OA strategies ever since the Budapest and Berlin Declaration have not really shaken the paywall system, nor changed anything in a substantial way to bring enough open access as it was declared and desired. And also in the past years, there was the growth in hybrid publishing that has created an additional and uncontrolled, unchecked revenue line flowing to the publishers outside the library domain, where we did not even know how much it was, where it happened, etc. So has been identified as a key problem. And then the other thing is that also that there is just no practical solution inside to the friction between the desire for more open access and the author reliance on established journals. So that there is an acknowledgement that, yeah, we have to find solutions that we can flip the existing journals as they are liked and preferred by our researchers and turn them into proper OA outlets for them. And in this little graphic, you see just the market share of the large commercial publishers. And so you see that this is very huge. And so we needed a solution specifically for the very big commercial publishers. And this is further reinforced by when we look at the financial side. So that is pretty much 60% according to a survey by the Deal Project Group, that our spending is being delivered to those publishers. And so therefore, there was a growing feeling in the country among the national working groups that we have in this context, that we simply could not afford not to adopt an OA 2020 strategy. And as you are probably all aware, OA 2020 is about repurposing the subscriptions funds to support open access publishing. So the objectives for the deal context was, so there was a growing understanding that agreements who are limited and based only on reading access are simply not good enough anymore. They are not state of the art, and we need to make better leverage with the money that we invest into the publishing system. So the idea was that we want to expand equal reading access rights to all researchers in Germany, whether they are in smaller or larger institutions, to secure permanent full text access to the scholarly journals also for future generations, to enable immediate open access publishing of all new research articles by authors from German institutions, corresponding authors in that respect, fair and reasonable pricing articulated with a simple, transparent, and future-oriented payment model. This payment model has received quite some attention in its own right. It has been published, discussed, and debated quite widely. This is the so-called PAR fee, the publish and read model that's been applied to both agreements that we have in the country. You are probably aware that both contracts have been published. They are publicly available in their entirety, so nothing has been blackened or left out. So the publish and read model is a bridge to enable the former subscriptions fee to be repurposed to support OA publishing, while mitigating the risk of financial disruptions for institutions and for the journals in which their researchers choose to publish. So the key terms for transformative agreements, and you see also links further down. This is further information on the concept of transformative agreements. You will find also links on my very last slide. So key elements as they were adopted in the OA 2020 initiative among all the groups who are represented there is that authors should retain the copyright and have a most liberal CC BY license as possible, to have transparency, to adhere to the notion of cost neutrality with respect to the current subscription spend, and to constrain the cost, and so in particularly to rein in the APCs that are paid for hybrid articles, as the APCs in the wild, as we have come to call them. So the accomplishments of a project deal is, so we have the two agreements, the one that was signed with Wiley in January 2019, and the one signed with Springer Nature in January 2020. Together, they will cover in the range of 23,000 new articles per year to be published open access, and also to massively expand the reading access for readers from pretty much like in the range of 700 institutions in the country. They all have the same access rights, large and small, as institutions, whether they had no subscriptions before or limited set of titles. They now have all access to the full publisher portfolio, and also with pretty much perpetual access rights. The costs have been all collapsed into a transparent PAR fee, and the PAR fee is the same for the two contracts, and they are established at the level of 2,750 euros per research article. This figure has also received quite a large public attention. I don't want to comment it here, but from the notions before about the cost neutrality, you can make the educated assumption that this reflects then really pretty much the spending level that the publishers used to have in the country, and that's been now transformed into the open access arena, and this is the level playing field for the future developments, so that it comes with pretty much what we think fair terms for all parties involved. So so we don't pay for lump sums of subscriptions anymore as we used in the past, but it's really a per article calculation and payment established for the future, and that's why it's also there important to have an emphasis on workflows, on data exchange, etc., which I will mention in a moment. So the payments for the OA publishing are centralized through that agreement, centralized at two levels, both on the deal contract part side towards the publisher, but also then internally at the institutions and in how they organize their own participation to the contract. The authors, that is important for everybody are alleviated of administrative burdens, and so that they should not have to bother with forwarding invoices. They are coming directly from the publisher to the contracting party, and then it's been passed on to the institutions. There is no double dipping in the sense that there's just no room for additional hybrid fees in the country. Some of the challenges we had to overcome. This is, of course, interesting to know. Here's the differentiation between the administrative side and the operational side. On the administrational side, of course, Germany, at least in the European context, is a large country and a federal country. So that means that there is no place for just a single strong national mandate for open access. So if we have mandates, they are only at an institutional or regional level, but not at the national level. And also the federal system with the many competencies in various regions and areas and domains slow down alignment. So the behind the scenes work to just get prepared and to organize the readiness that is needed for this type of agreements required quite some investment of energy, effort, strategy, etc. The library consortia in the countries that we have, our regional consortia were regarded with in front of the big commercial publishers that they were just not empowered enough to negotiate an all-in approach that we thought was needed. And so therefore that's why we needed these structural preparations to engage in those negotiations in the first place. Of course, then there is also with so many institutions there's also a gap and the lack in awareness. So funding and operations are very often oriented around the old system, and everything that is new is sometimes seen as a challenge, regarded with apprehension. Some see more risk and complication rather than chance and opportunities, etc., etc. So the human factor, the inertia in structural systems, all this, of course, was also something that was not always an enabler in the sense of speeding up things. And then there are multi-stakeholder communication needs, starting at the very top levels, at the rector's level, president, vice president levels, at the universities and research organizations, all the way through legal people, administrator level people, operation level people, and of course also the libraries at their various hierarchical levels, from the library director down to the OA representatives or officer, etc. So this is all massive and much. Operational, a lacuna in data sources and tracking. Agnes has mentioned all this challenge. I guess that's pretty obvious if you focus on the publishing side. You need to be aware of where your publications go and what the trends over the past years were, how many publications you can expect, anticipate with a given publisher, etc. Where are trends, etc. Then there is a disconnect between the research and the library interaction with publishers and funding streams. So that means our authors, when they interact with publishers, also invest money, engage in transactions that libraries are not very much aware. And this is also a challenge to bring this, at least in aggregate numbers, somehow together so that it can be managed under one and the same contractual relationship. Library budgets, workflows, processes, and staff oriented around the older system, and of course there must be openness and readiness to accept change, to see this as an opportunity and not to work against this. Some solutions we implemented, I will try to speed up. We had a multi-stakeholder project group and negotiating team. I mentioned this before. And then we also had to establish a new consortium entity to sign the agreement and manage the operations. This is the MPDL Services GmbH, which is the deal operating entity for the entire country. So it's a communications hub for operations to support libraries as they adopt new workflows. It's the central management of invoicing and money flows between the publisher and also internally from the institutions to reduce the administrative burden. And it acts as a transformer for payment structures to enable new cost allocation models that ease on transition for library budgets. Lessons learned, I have this one and another slide and I'm done. The lessons learned is we all know this is all very complex and ambitious, the deal approach. It requires intense collaboration across all stakeholder groups, in particular also with the publishers involved. But we see the agreements negotiated and implemented really as a proof of effectiveness and viability of our transformative strategies. The focus, and this cannot be emphasized highly enough, must really be on the workflows. The agreements must establish standards to ensure authors are clearly informed about their OA publishing entitlements in the submission process. Authors must be quickly and properly identified to capture and approve eligibility so as not to hold up the publication process. All costs and billing are based on publishing output. Therefore, reporting of publishing articles must be reliable, timely, and precise. And the data quality and completeness matter. Author affiliation, full bibliographic information in all the reports. OA funding statements are important. The OA license type also to be registered with Crossref. These all are very essential elements. What comes next? That's the final slide and my conclusion. So this is at 3 levels. So the evolution of the current deal agreements in the context of the overall development and proliferation of transformative agreements. So our expectation is that the par fees can only go down to reflect the decrease in closed content. If there are more transformative agreements, naturally the OA content in the transformative in the paywall journals will increase, and perhaps even significant increase, as our expectation would be, and cost will be reduced to transparent and comparable open access publishing charges. The library implementation, there's also a great area for further work. We need a greater readiness for the fully open access paradigm in scholarly communication with budgets and processes future oriented. And then, of course, since Deal set out to negotiate 3 contracts, we have only 2. There is the last of the big 3. We will have to see. But in the meantime, many libraries are using their former subscription monies on other OA-related initiatives and services. And so we think we are in a situation that we can comfortably just wait and see whether we have the chance to find also common ground with Elsevier as the remaining publisher. With that, I would like to end and thank you very much for your attention. Links are provided here.
Thank you very much, Ralph. That was a super interesting presentation. We have lots of questions now. Agnes, are you still online? Because we have plenty for you as well. There you are. Hey. So a quick question from Helen Dobson. You had 15 fully OA publishers included in your deals at the moment. Was that the correct number, Agnes?
I think I put in my presentation around 13.
13. Okay.
With full open access publishers, yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. Thank you. And a question from Jenny de la Salle. Thanks for an interesting presentation and congratulations on so much good work. I noticed on Agnes' slide relating to the percentage of OA that there seemed to be a large drop in bronze OA between 2018 and 2019. Do we know why? That's for you, Agnes. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to admit, no idea. No.
Yeah. I think we have similar numbers when looking in Sweden as well, and we think it's because the publishers stop just releasing free content, which I think might be a good development because it's better to have a proper license so we know what we can do with the material and to have a sustainable access as well. From Christine Weil-Miko, could you evaluate the time, full-time equivalent, to check the OA production and spendings? That's a hard one, isn't it, Agnes?
Yeah. I think every case is different because it depends if you have to manage 3 transformative agreements or a full portfolio of publishers. So from now, I just could give a number from our institution dealing right now just for the full open access agreement plus the 3 transformative agreements. We have 2 people in place in order to follow up all the CSIC publications process.
But they don't work full time, those 2 people, with that only, or?
No, not full time. No.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future that will be a full-time job. Yeah.
Yeah, let's imagine if you had 100 agreements, that might be a bit more. Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Aya Ursula. For Agnes, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask what you could suggest to start with at the first steps of this journey. I mean, from 0 point. To join this effort with other organizations of the country is better. Is it that better, or is it fine to only one organization starts a dialogue with the publishers? Would they listen if there was no significant voice from the whole country? Maybe you have such experience that you could share here. So how did you?
I think there is no solution that fits all cases.
Yeah.
So it depends. In our case, we started alone because we didn't find how to say it in order to be politically correct. We didn't find peers outside in order to go with. I think it's better to go with some colleagues, to go with not to do it alone.
Yeah.
But also it depends on the situation where you are and depends on the publishers you want to address. So I mean, it's a matter of strategy.
I guess so, and I guess it also differs between different libraries, what kind of deals they are mostly interested in. Ralph, you might have some experience here to add on to that question as well. What do you think? Should you start small with, or should we gather a gang to get started?
Well, I would always say if you do the other, you don't. If you do one, you don't have to neglect the other. So I would say I would always start small, meaning as small as possible and as immediately as possible. And for some of the bigger ones, and bigger must not be the size necessarily of the publisher. I'm not talking necessarily about the really big ones. Also, the others can be big in various ways, but so there, some would require more preparation and development of a plan and get commitment, backing, etc. And in other cases, it can be done relatively fast. It depends also on the readiness that you find on all sides, on the institution side and also on the publisher side. And also the numbers are sometimes helpful. I mean, in some context, where also the what is cost neutral, it just works out with a pretty simple and decent equation that works for everybody. And in other cases, there's more imbalance, and so what is simple for one can be already a very complicated case for the other.
Exactly.
But it means the good news is there are always low hanging fruits for everybody. And I would go for the low hanging fruits, but at the same time prepare my ladder so that I can climb up to the higher hanging fruits next year or the year after next. So
exactly, put it in perspective. We are at 12 now, but we have some interesting questions for you, Ralph, as well. So I hope that everybody would hang on a few more minutes. If you can, we will record the rest as well. I just want to add to that comment about where to start is that from the Swedish agreement that I've not been involved with, but I know of because I work with the people who are, and we started with the numbers. So analyzing where the low-hanging fruit were, where the researchers chose to publish the most, or where we spend the most money, and where we could find a balance. So we started with analysis of the numbers. And I can add that we are planning another webinar when the LIBER conference was supposed to be. And that will focus on how to deal with the numbers for these negotiations. So stay tuned for news from LIBER about how to work with that if you're interested. Okay, sorry. So on our loaned time, we have some questions for Ralph as well. From Jack Highland. I'd welcome more detail on what cost neutral means. Is this relative to legacy subscription spend only, or legacy subscriptions plus APC spend? Yeah, that's a debated term, isn't it, Ralph?
Yeah, well, I would say there is no clear-cut black and white kind of an answer. So what I prefer to say here, if I would bring in the notion of fairness. If you think this the equation of what you are discussing in an agreement, what's in and what's the cost component, and you think it's fair, and the other side, the publisher, also thinks it's fair, then I would say then it's cost neutral enough. So we have the examples. We know this, that in some agreements the APC spend on hybrids is a factor, and it's been perpetuated, and some would have a readiness to accept this still as cost neutral, others would not. And it depends also on the numbers, Sophie, as you said. In our case, we also our own institutional agreements, we can say we have examples of the case with APCs, and the majority is without the APCs. But it depends. I would say if it has to work in a context, and if you think it's fair, then it's good enough.
But could it also be that cost neutrality is not just within the own institution, but also if you work with others? So if you can get a research funder to add on things, it might be on the whole cost neutrality, while for the institution or for the agreement itself, it might not, right?
Well, in our case, also for the deal agreements, I mean they are very large, and the notion of cost neutrality in this case, I mean there are so many institutions. We did not have a 100% precise figure. I mean, what was our current print spend? Yes, we have a common understanding that was shared between the publisher and the deal parties, but nobody knew whether it was really reflecting 100% of the reality. There's a margin of error because the universe of subscriptions and how they are sold and organized is just very, very complicated. So our understanding is that that it's the pricing level where we are today under this agreement is pretty much informed of the previous subscription spend, there with a moderate inflation rate adjustment, because the data analysis was always based on the 2017 data to lift it up to 2019 or 2020. So in our understanding, we would say that the previous hybrid spends were not factored into that equation, but maybe the publishers in their internal rationalizations see it a little bit different. So, but I would say in the end, this is where we could shake hands and sign the agreements, and that's why I would say it's the level of fairness is in the sense that I just mentioned was valid or is valid.
Good, thank you. Yeah, sorry for spending a little bit of time on that, but I know this is something that's discussed a lot. Do we have another question from Jenny de la Salle? Thanks to Ralph Schimmer, it is good to hear the lessons learned. I'm a big fan of DEAL and what it is achieving, especially given the challenges it is overcoming. DEAL involves additional payments from publish-heavy institutions, which can be claimed back from the German Research Foundations, a little bit what we talked about here. Ralph, can you tell us anything more about how this is working?
Yes, I hope I can. It's again complex. I hope to make it short and precise enough that people can understand it. So we as the APC, the par fee is the denominator, the what we pay to the publishers. This is publication-based payment. This is the external facing payment stream. Internally, how we collect the money, we have a two-stage process. So the commitment of the institution is based on their previous subscription spend, so that there is not too massive disruption in the budgeting. But all the institutions will get a second invoice. The first one is really like an annual prepayment, as we are all used to, and the second is then after the year is over, another invoice based on the actual output of these institutions. And so then it comes with a new balance. So that means some would have to pay more, 50% more, 20% more. Others would be entitled for get their money back or certain percent. And this is where the support of our funder kicks in. This helps us to stretch the effects of reallocating budgets, to stretch this process over more years and to soften the effects, so that institutions have the liberty not to pay the full additional amount if they cannot find the money themselves. The consequence would be that the others who would get money back will not get the full amount back that they were entitled. The overall thing is that the books of MPL services will have to be balanced for each year, and so that's the delicate mechanism that comes with some complexity, but we buy ourselves time so that the effects don't kick in immediately, and that's very helpful, and that's just something that requires also new roles, new understanding. This has not fully arrived everywhere in the country, but this is part of the process that we will have to continue.
But it seems like it was preceded by a lot of discussions on how to do it as well. But you might not want to go into detail about that.
Absolutely. I mean, these things, as I said, are very complex. They require a lot of creativity in thinking and also in operation. I mean, you need to have experts on the legal side, on workflow engineering, on technical side, for new technical implementations, who all come with an openness in mind. If people react like, oh, these are the processes we are used to and we cannot change, then you are in trouble, because this is a transition. This requires change at various levels. And if there is not enough openness, readiness, and also competence to do it in a very efficient way, then there are chances that you will get stuck somewhere. And yeah.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions more, so sorry about running over time, but this is really interesting. Thank you, Ralph. There was a question from Marianne Natonaki. How many people work for MDPL entity? Do we know that, or is
For
that their discretion?
for our new service entity? No, there is I think I've seen it also in the other chat. There was also the question about the overhead fee. So towards the publisher, we pay 2,750 euros per paper. Internally, we add an overhead of 150 euros on top of that. So internally, we sell for 2,900, and the 150 overhead, which, when you make the calculation, is a substantial amount that is used for a variety of purposes, and one is also to compensate for our staff investment. So that means the operations themselves are being paid, but they are not nearly as expensive as the money that we collect. So if you read the Wiley contract, there was an archive component to be financed. So the money collected was used to finance this. And in the Springer Nature case, we use it also to ease the internal money reallocations. So that's how this all is used. In terms of staff, we bring in our people they work part on their regular Max Planck facing duties, and part of their time, sometimes 20, some 50, some 80% on MPDL services. And if we combine all these amounts, I mean, we might be in the range of 7 FTEs that we invest currently, and okay. But it's not a fully precise calculation. It's definitely below 10, and because at some cases we have already seen speculations that we would have hired dozens of people, which is simply not true.
Okay, good to know. Also, somebody asked from Ramon Ross if there's a percentage of reading and a percentage of publishing in the 2,750 euro fee, or is it just for the publishing?
No, when you look at the contracts, you will not find a further breakdown of that cost structure. Is a uniform consolidated fee where it was explicitly not divided up between reading and publishing. That is very clear. There is a new challenge now because we had legislation in our country that now the VAT for print for electronic went down, and so now this issue is now being raised from the tax side, whether it's this fee has to be divided into components, but this is not yet resolved. This is an ongoing issue, and this will be decided not as part of the contract. This will be decided by tax experts, legal experts, etc. So I'm not qualified or competent enough to answer that question.
Okay. The last question now is from Francois Van Doren. The transformative agreements, are they multi-year contracts? And is the fee, the par fee, negotiated every year? That was a good one.
Well, I would say the transformative agreements are better multi-year because, as I said, they are complex by themselves. And I guess nobody voluntarily wants to redo them on a yearly basis. I mean, no. that would be too much. Whether or not the par fee changes over the course of time, that is a matter of negotiations. I would say from the evidence collected at the ESAC registry, etc. I would say that normally in most cases the par fee or the publishing fee however it's expressed is pretty much stable across the time span of the agreement. But there are examples where this can change, or maybe there's even an annual increase in some cases. But the answer is it's a matter of the negotiations where you end and what
but it
you
seems
accept.
wise to not do it every year, yes. And also in the long term, we hope that transformative agreements are transformative. So we will have something else in the next few years when the system has flipped more, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, when you have a transformative agreement only for 1 year, I mean, one of the expectations that you have with these agreements is that you build additional and new data evidence, and data and evidence needs time to develop and to be collected and to be digested. So if you would have to renegotiate after 6 months, your new data basis will probably not be good enough, reliable, or large enough and so you are not smarter after 6 months than you were before. So therefore, my recommendation would definitely be to engage minimum in a 2-year perspective.
Okay. Well, with that said, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Both Agnes and Ralph, you have given some excellent advice. And we wrap up today's webinar, I think. Yes, and thank you to the audience for listening in and for standing with another 15 minutes or so. Thank you so much. Have a great day and take care of each other out there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.